Morning, Marvin. No, no sound. Put your sound on.
Now I got you. Hi.
How you doing?
Oh, I guess all right. I wasn't sure. I didn't know what's going in the shul, so I'm home
Yeah,
today.
I heard the generator kept on going in and out on
On Shabbos, I heard.
Friday night and Shabbos.
Right. I don't know what happened yesterday, what's there this morning, so I decided to stay
Just in
home,
case.
driving home and Zoom.
Okay,
How are you?
not bad.
Good.
No complaints.
Good. That's good.
One of these days, I'll eventually get the shul.
Okay, gentlemen, let's
Sorry.
Good
cease
morning,
our
Ken.
political discussions right now. We're gonna get started momentarily. I got at least two guys on Zoom already. And remember, we'll record the session. Okay?
Ken, was there power in shul this morning?
Yeah, only about 20 minutes late. That's all.
I decided to not take any chances.
You're all right. You're all right. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right. All the guys are on Zoom. All right. Very good. So it means I can start with our sponsors and then we'll go right into the DAF. All right.
Good.
This way it's not a long DAF today, a little bit complicated, I will tell you that. Only took me 3 attempts to go through it.
Good.
Okay. Sid is waiting to see if they need, and Bob Rumber, Sid is staying in to see if they need, okay? And Bob, okay, also, okay. Do they look like they'll have a minion? Bob?
They're shocked right now, but we'll see.
Okay. All right, there's at least one chair there. If Sid comes in, we'll put- yeah. I know Mesh was trying to corner some people to come on Shabbos. Okay, learning sponsors. A Year of Learning by Sue and Arnie Garelick in memory of Malka Perlman and Philip Mann and Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, and Yerivka Pro Rosner Bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, in a memory of family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Shall assure her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva, Marcia Federbush and family. Excuse me. In memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends. In memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan. In memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell, and Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, Charna bat Yeshaya. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael in her memory. Friends of Malka Levy, Yosef. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine, in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata bat Asher. Have a month of learning sponsored by David and Mendel Cheslow in memory of his mother, Bela Bas Meir. Marcia Federbush in memory of her husband, Uriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon. Gary and Marcia Schrager in memory of his father, David ben Yosef, and his mother, Freda Bat Hendel. Okay, Dov Budlander in memory of his parents, Tzvi ben Yaakov Yitzchak and Bela Drasha Bas Harav Dober, and his in-laws Yehuda Tzvi ben David Nachum and Alta Chaya Bat Avram Yosef. We have a week of learning by Vicky Rubinovich Fish and Larry Fish in memory of her father, Chaim Zusia ben Shlomo ben Sion, and her mother Ita Bat Tzvi. By Michael and Judy Poretsky in memory of his father, Gershom ben Chaim Tzvi. We have a day of, let's see, today's date is the, no, okay, 50th, right? All right,
15.
so that's it. I mean, Shema's having Aliyah, Cranker Rafia Vati Tzliya, and the Chol B'nai Israel Good Gebenched Yard.
Hey,
Yeah, okay.
Amen.
All right. The rest are of the individual days are for later. Okay, so I want to go back for a moment to the bottom of Lamed Pet Amud Beis. Okay. Okay. We were finding that the Gemara was referring to the fact that certain phrases needed to be said together, okay, and not be broken up, right? And so 3 lines from the bottom of the Amud, we have Amar Rava, says Rava, Lo lima inish beruch haba v'hadar b'shem Hashem. That one should not say, basically, blessed is he who comes, and then afterwards pause, and then say in the name of Hashem, Ela baruch haba b'shem Hashem v'hadadeh. But needed to say it all as one phrase, okay? Remember, this was connected with the fact that if one said during the response of the Kaddish, Yehei Shmei Rabbim, etc., that one doesn't break it up. So this was another statement connecting with that. Bob, you okay there?
Yeah, I'm okay, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
That sound good?
Okay, Amale Rav Safra. Okay, so Rav Safra says now in response to what Rabbah has said, he's going to challenge him. Moshe, he calls him, as if he's comparing him to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was Gadol Hador. So he's comparing him likewise. It's a Shapir Kamart. So really, is that what you're really saying? This is a question here, not an exclamation mark. All right? Elahatam lahacha asuke miltahi velit lanba. He says there it's simply the continuation, the concluding part of a statement. In other words, it's all one thought. And since they're really a single unit, it's not a problem if somebody has to pause for some reason and catch their breath or, doesn't respond all in one long statement. Okay. Now, Rav is going to come back in another statement. Amar Rabba, he says, Lo lima inish, a person should not say, and here's what I was referring to, Yehei Shmei Rabba, V'hadar Mevarech, and afterwards continue the rest of the blessing. Okay? Right? Ella Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach, but he should say it all together, Bahadade. Right? Amarle Rav Safra, and Rav Safra responds again, criticizing him. Right? Moshe, again, saying the same thing. You're supposed to be the Gadol Hador. Why are you saying that? Shapir Kamar. Is that what you're really saying again? Elahatam Vahacha. Both there and here, he's telling him, Asuke Miltahu Velit Lanba. It's really the concluding statement, or the concluding part of a larger statement. And therefore, as a result, it's one single concept. Okay, and if one has to, for some whatever reason, pause in between, okay, it's not an issue. That's what he's saying. And that's where we stopped yesterday. Okay, so we're picking up for today's daf on Lamed Tet, Amud Aleph. It's about 6 lines down. Okay, Makom shenahagu lichpo. Okay, so we said, according to the Mishnah, that there were places where it was appropriate to repeat or to say a second time the same line. Okay, Tana. And our Tana teaches Rebbe Kofel ba Varim. Rebbe would repeat, okay, certain words, right? Rebbe Elazar ben Parta Mosif Badvar. And Rebbe Elazar ben Parta would add additional words that he would repeat. Okay, so the Gemara asks, "Mai Mosif, what is it that Rebbe Elazar is adding?" Okay, Amar Abaye, he says, "Mosif lechpo me'odata ulamata." In other words, he would begin from the first line of that particular section of Tehillim. Okay, in other words, and then continue from there on, in addition to what Rebbe was repeating. Okay? So if we had looked at the text of the Siddur, Odchaki Anitani, etc., etc., Odchaki Anitani, etc., etc. So that's what we do today. We repeat those lines as well as what comes later. All right, they're all in the same parak of Tehillim. Okay, if we can get a seat for, all right, is there, okay, you're going to go around? Okay. Okay, so that's the point that he's saying. So now, somebody said it for them.
Yeah.
Okay, then the person would repeat. So in our case, the custom became the chazan would say it, so therefore we repeat. Okay, so I think that's the basis for why it's giving that.
Well,
There's no other part of Domini which requires it.
we look at that,
Anna,
Tehillim, everything is covered up, except from these words.
you also have Ana Hashem Hoshiana. That section is repeated as well. Okay,
That's what Rebbe was.
exactly. That's what
And-
Rebbe
and
was
he
saying.
added
Then
on
Rabbi
from all the-
Elazar added additional earlier parts of that
Right,
same
right.
section of Tehillim.
Something.
Okay. Now, I want to clarify as we go into the next section of the Mishnah. Okay, citing Levorech Yevorech. If one blesses, he should bless. I was very surprised, as we're going to go into the Gemara in a moment, but to see that Art Scroll refers to this issue of blessing for a section that comes at the end of the Hallel. Koren, however, presented it as to dealing with the blessing at the beginning of Hallel. Okay, so there was a mark. So unlike other sections where sometimes the translation is different, that we can all understand. You know, you want to translate one word this way, one word slightly that way. Okay. But when you're saying that there's a difference in the actual Inyan that they're discussing, it's a little problematic. So now we're coming to our next piece in the Mishnah. Okay, that if one to recite the blessing, one should recite the blessing. Okay, Amar Abaye. Okay, Lo shana ela la'acharav, aval lefanav mitzvah levarech. Okay, so Abaye's statement seems to be a clarification, okay, of the idea that according to Abaye, they're talking about a blessing at the end, okay, of the Hallel, after the Hallel is said. But when it comes to the blessing at the beginning of the Hallel, okay, everyone basically has an understanding that they have a mitzvah to recite it. Okay, now, why is this important? As an aside, we should realize two items. Number one, if our Gemara has said to us that when somebody else reads it as an adult, we need to repeat it, maybe that's the reason that when we say Hallel, okay, the Shliach Tzibur says it first, and then we all recite Hallel, the blessing for Hallel. Okay. Second reason, remember there's a major machloket, okay, whether or not on certain occasions like Yom HaAtzmaut, whether you actually have an obligation to recite that blessing. Some people will recite the blessing at the beginning of Hallel on that occasion. Some people will say Hallel, but they won't recite the blessing on Hallel at the beginning on a situation like Yom HaAtzmaut. So I just call that to our attention, okay? And within this context, to understand that it's not just a stam issue that the Gemara raises, okay? But that it has direct application.
In the case that this arises before, or then it's not the first time. Did we have that problem before, whether to say bracha or not?
Okay. Here, well, that's why I'm saying. Why then does Koren raise the issue that it's the blessing before, as opposed to Art Scroll saying it's the blessing after? Do we actually have a blessing at the end of Hallel?
There is no rule about this.
What? That's the question.
That's the point.
I mean,
It's the question of the Rabbanan or not. Right.
it's not part of the Hallel itself.
Right.
See, that's the question. When I davened in Young Israel or Woodmere,
Yeah.
they never said at the end on Omat Smith, they didn't say no.
Right. They don't say it at the
They,
beginning.
at the last, they don't say.
The last paragraph.
The last paragraph. That's the bracha. And so so then if that's the case, I don't have a sitter handy, but okay. But that's part of the issue. Okay.
Yeah, I understand. I
Right.
understood that. I'm just telling you how they do it in Israel
Okay.
Woodmere.
All
What
right.
they do
So,
in other places.
no, but I appreciate you bringing that point to our attention, Sid, because that could be the reason that there's a difference between Art Scroll's explanation and Koren's explanation.
Exactly, right.
Okay. All right. So I think it starts. Let me do. The Art Scroll has a note.
Yeah, no?
No. Okay. That's the next note. That was note 1. Okay. But before that. Okay. Okay. All right. Anyway, so that's the question. The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Kol hamitzvot kulan mevarech aleihen over la'asiyatam. According to Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, okay, when we perform a mitzvah, we generally recite, I say generally because I'm going to give you an example where that doesn't apply. Okay, we generally recite the blessing before we perform the act. By the way, we should know that there are 2 exceptions to that particular halakha. Okay, one of them, if you watch your wife when she says benches licht on Friday night, okay, she does motions. One, she would do hand motions and then cover her eyes and then say the bracha.
And then lights.
and then light. So that's the one.
No,
No,
she
no, no,
lied
no.
before.
No,
Like before, that's
She
what.
said the bracha.
That's what
she says the
Oh,
bracha
right,
then
right,
covers,
she said
all right,
no.
and then she removes her hand so that she benefits from the light, and that's how it's. But the other example also, by the way, happens to be with when somebody goes into the mikvah. They immerse first, okay, and then they come up and say the bracha, and then they immerse again.
Rabbi Green, if a man is lighting candles,
Right,
or, because unfortunately the wife is not
Right.
there, does he light in the same procedure?
Yes,
yes,
Same order, yeah?
of
Yeah.
course. You can't say the bracha and then like. You say the bracha and
Yeah.
Machavu Shabbos.
Right.
Hanukkah, you make the bracha, and then you light the candle.
right.
On
Same
Shabbos,
thing.
you can't.
Shabbos, what you make the bracha.
So the Gemara is bothered here, not so much by the act, but by the language. How do we know that the word over in this case implies to do something? Right? Umay mashma dahai over lishma da'akdum.
No, it's relevant what I'm asking, but I understand that from the beginning of I don't understand at the end. The beginning is Asher Kichanu Mitzvah Tzivonu. The argument is who? There was no.
All right.
Who gets with Tzivonu?
Somebody, okay.
But what's at the end? Why?
I want to deal with your question. Okay, let's just finish this one little section, then we'll come back. The Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. So we're going to see three different suggestions as how we can show that the word over means in advance. Okay. The Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, the pasuk that says, "V'yarat achimat derech hakikar v'yavor hakushi." Okay, so he cites that pasuk from Shmuel, I think, if I remember, right?
Yes, Shmuel.
Okay, that he ran, that Achimahatz wanted to run and give the news to the king, to David, okay, ahead of the other individual who was sent. All right, so that would be one case. Okay, somebody gives it another alternative. Abayim mehacha from here, from this pasuk, v'hu over lefneihem. Okay, that he goes before them. All right, that was with another example. All right, now the problem, by the way, with that pasuk, using that as the basis, is we have the word lifneihem in that pasuk. So, with all due respect to Abaye, that's not the best verse to use as a proof text to show that the word over means to go before. And therefore, I'm suggesting that's why we then go on v'ibayat ema, and others might say mehacha from this pasuk. V'ya'avor mi, right? Lefnehem v'Hashem b'rosham. That's enough. So we have three different attempts to prove that the word over means to go before, to precede, things like that. Okay, now,
What do you need?
I need a sitter. Okay, there should be one, at least used to be.
Okay.
Okay. So as we're going to go into the new Mishnah, let me just quickly touch on Sam's point. Okay. And then, so Sid's, okay. All right. So at the end of Hallel, Yahalucha Hashem Tzadikim Osir Ritzoncha Ritzonecha V'chol Amcha Beit Yisrael Barina Yodu V'Varchu V'Shavchu V'Faru V'Yaminu V'Yaritzu V'Yakdishu V'Yamlichu Et Shemcha Malkeinu V'Racha Tov L'Shemcha Na'el L'Zomer Kime'olam V'Yad. Then it's finished. Baruch Atah Hashem Melech Mehulal. so it's that paragraph, that bracha that they must be referring to. Do you include that or not? Right?
The end.
So that would be the answer to your question, as that's the argument that they have. You include that section.
What's the significance of it? What is the significance? The beginning.
Okay, because why? Because we have a practice normally when we take something out of the Tanakh and we use it in the davening, we generally precede it and conclude it with a blessing in front and back. What's my examples? Number one, for an aliyah, the person coming up for the aliyah says a bracha, they read from the Torah, and then they say another blessing. Second example, Hallel. I'm sorry, not Hallel, a Haftorah. Somebody's called the Haftorah, they say a blessing, they read a section from Navi, and then they say other blessings afterwards. Third example, in the daven, right? You start off in the morning with, okay, every day after you finish Psukei de Zimra, what is the first section up next? Baruch.
Shama.
Right? You continue, you say sections from Ketuvim, and you finish it with Yishtabah, which is a bracha. Okay, so the idea here too, with the Hallel, with the sections of Tehillim, okay, used in davening. Generally, we follow this practice of saying it with a bracha in the front and a bracha at the end. And that's what the example we have here, also with the normal recitation of Hallel. Okay.
It's significant. Baruch Hashem,
That's a full.
That's Sivanu. So that means that the Rabbanim.
But we don't say that here. I just read that to you. It doesn't say a Asher Kiddushanu. At the beginning,
right?
But not at the end.
Okay, so at the beginning, I understand the machlok.
Okay, that's why I said. But they're saying the machloket applies to that section that we just read to you. Okay, thank you, Bob, for getting that.
Again, but isn't there a machlokas by Pesach, by the Seder, about by that section, how you finish that bracha?
Could be. I've never seen it raised in regards to the Seder, but it could be right.
Well, you say Melch Behuda, but Tishbachos, or
remember also there's different minhagim there. Sfardim, I think, have a practice, and not just Sfardim, but Samashkim, of reciting Hallel the night before the night. All right? No, Shul for the Seder.
right.
And then they say it in the
They say it
Seder.
in shul, right?
Sfardic minhag, I know for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Let's go on to our new right? Matnit. Now, we're going to deal with the question in this Mishnah, okay, as we roll on. Okay, let's assume that I have to go to buy lulav or my etrog from an Am Haaretz, okay? Somebody who is questionable about doing tithing. When would this be of most concern to me? During Shemitah year, okay? And so that's what we're going to address now. Matnitin says our Mishnah, Halokeach lulav mechavaro b'shvi'it. One who purchases his lulav from a friend, a neighbor, during Shvi'it, the 7th year, which is the Shemitah year. Notein lo etrog b'matana. Okay, the seller should give him the etrog as a gift. Lefi she'ein rashai lelakcho b'shvi'it.
Because you're not allowed to sell.
Right,
This stuff from going.
during the year of the Shemitah. Why is that the case? The Gemara is going to go into it in more detail. Rashi gives a couple of examples, and of course Tosafot disagrees and gives a different example. Others, okay? So there are at least 3 or 4 different shatim on why this is the case. The simplest that we're going to see is going to be Rashi's. Okay? Right? But we'll come back to it when we get to it. Gemara. Lo ratzali tein lo b'matana. Mahu. If the seller, haaretz, doesn't want to give it to him as a gift, what's the situation? Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, the following suggestion: Mavliya le demei etrog belulav. Okay, that he should swallow, he should include the cost of the etrog when he pays for the lulav. Okay. Okay. V'leitev le- So the Gemara raises a question. So let him pay it directly. What is the issue of paying this Am Haaretz during the Shvi'it year? Why not pay him directly? Right. So now the Gemara is going to come back to it. Lafisha ein nosrin demei peirot Shvi'it la'am Haaretz. Because we don't give the money, okay, for produce produced during the Shemitah year to a Am Haaretz. Why is that the case? Because we're not supposed to use gain any commercial benefit from produce that is grown during the Shemitah year. And we're concerned lest the Am Haaretz, not only might he not tithe it, but he might use it for commercial purposes. Okay? Okay, that could be an approach. Titania, as we learn in a Braita, the following: Ein mosrin demei peirot shvi'it la'am haaretz yoter mimazon losh seudot. Okay, that we should not pay a Am Haaretz money for produce that has been grown during the Shemitah year, any more than enough money to provide him with sustenance for 3 meals. Okay? Now, ve'im masar, and if he gave him, what happens? Yomar harei ma'ot elu yiu mechulalin al peirot sheyechu b'toch beito. Okay? And what are we telling him? We're saying that he has to deconsecrate that money that was given to him for that produce, okay? Because otherwise, all right, it is not appropriate. He's over on using that money for commercial purposes, right? So what happens? And that money that's in his home, who's to say that he isn't going to use it for whatever? Okay. So the Gemara, as we go over to the next Amud, tells us, Uba va'ochlan b'kedushat shvi'it. And what happens? Then it might be that if he doesn't deconsecrate that money, going to be using that money to buy other foodstuffs and eating things that have shvi'it inappropriately, right?
When the person gives them, or it's the money for the estrog, he says, I'm a house on my food in my house, well, and he asked to eat the food b'kedusha. That's what they were saying.
Right, we'll get to that in a second.
He eats it b'kedusha shvius.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Okay. All right. So what's the point? Okay, what happens? Uba va'ochlin b'kedushat shvius. Okay, what's the issue here? Okay, is it that the person who is purchasing the etrog has to deconsecrate that money? Okay, otherwise,
If I give it,
right? In other words, otherwise the question is that inappropriate? All right, okay, because the concern is right? The Am Haaretz may use that money for more than just the amount that's acceptable. Okay, so that part seems to be the issue. Okay, now what happens here? There's another stipulation. Okay, Bamed Varim Amurim Belokeach Min HaMufkar. Okay, that this etrog, let's say, for the moment, was purchased from a ownerless field. Okay, aval belokeach min hamishumar, but if it was purchased from a field that was protected, guarded, watched,
Owned by
afil
somebody.
even if it paid him as little amount as a half an isar, that is forbidden. Okay, so what is the Gemara concerned with here? It's concerned with not simply eating, okay, items that were grown during Shemitah, but it's also concerned with the sale, the commercial sale of produce that was grown during Shemitah, okay, and that the Am Haaretz, okay, may not necessarily deconsecrate that money and go ahead and use it inappropriately. Okay, so what happens? Meitiv Rav Sheshet. Rav Sheshet challenges this, and he says the following: Umin hamufkar shlosha seudot v'tulo, that the amount at best you could pay this Am Haaretz, okay, is only enough to satisfy 3 meals, and it was like food for Shabbat and no more, or minhag. But we'll challenge this with the following contradiction, saying as follows: Hapigam, which is called Ru, R-U-E, Vahayir Vuzin, and that's sorrel, S-O-R-R-E-L. Those are both herbs, right? Vahashitum, and that's asparagus. Vahalaglugut, okay, and that's another kind of item called the purslane. Vakusbar, that's coriander seed. Okay? Shabaharim, that grows in the mountains. Vahakarpas shen benaharot, and that is parsley that grows along riverside, right? Vahagargir shel, and that is another kind of herb that grows in the sort of meadows. Okay, in other words, all of these items, right? Paturim min hamaaser, they are exempt from tithing, right? V'nikhin mikol adam b'shvi'it, and they may be purchased, okay, from any person during the Shemitah year, lafi she'ein kiyotze bahen nishmar, because they are not, I'm going to phrase the word, they don't come out, they don't grow, okay, in an area that is guarded, watched, or protected. In other words, they grow wild, these herbs. And since they grow wild, they're ownerless. And so if they're ownerless, they can be purchased from an Am Haaretz without the 3 meal limit. Okay? So that seems to disagree with the statement that we've got this 3 meal limit, right? All right, so what happens? Okay, who motivla v'hu mefarekla. Okay, he raised the challenge and he also answered it. Oh, okay, I thought that was the fire alarm again. Okay, yeah, b'chdei man hushana. Okay, but there they're talking about sustenance. That's what we learned it about. V'chein amar Rava bar bar Chana, and likewise it was said by Rava bar bar Chana amar Rabbi Yochanan. the name of Rabbi Yochanan, b'chdei man shani. Okay, that we were dealing with issues of food, real foodstuffs, sustenance.
Is it my responsibility or the guy who's selling me the?
Okay. All right. So that is a good question. I'm going to respond this way. All right. Since it's questionable whether the seller, Am Haaretz, is going to do the appropriate thing, if you question whether he tithes, therefore you're also going to question he's going to deconsecrate that money that you've paid for that item, okay? Because if he doesn't deconsecrate it, he's over on commercial use of Shvi'it produce, okay? Therefore, the Gemara seems to be suggesting that the buyer has got to be the one to say, I'm going to, in advance, deconsecrate this money so that it's no longer has that value, that significance. Okay? Right, Sam? Is that fine? Okay. So the Gemara now asks, Mai mashma dahai man lishna de mazonehu? How do we know that this phrase man means food, sustenance? Right? Dichtiv, because it's written, Vaiman lahem hamelech lagomer, that the king prepared a meal for them. Ihachi, lulav nami, says the Gemara. If that's the case, okay, maybe we have a problem even simply I'm putting in, purchasing the lulav from an Am Haaretz. Okay, maybe I'm going to argue that the lulav could be produce that's from Shvi. There too, maybe that's the issue, right? The ihachi lulav nam, lulav bar shishit hanichnas l'shvi'itu. No, says the Gemara, a lulav can't grow to the appropriate height in just the time from Rosh Hashanah to Sukkot. Okay, it means it had to have started growing in the previous year. So it's produce of the 6th year that simply happens to hang over, continue over into the 7th year. So the Gemara says, Ihachi, if that's the case, etrognami bat sheshet hanichneset l'shvi'itu. Maybe I could argue likewise that the etrog also started growing in the previous year, in the 6th year, and just hung over, just continued over into the new year. Okay? And therefore the etrog also shouldn't be considered produce of the Shemitah year. Right? So the Gemara has an answer to that. Etrog batar lekita azlin. The etrog, okay, its timing, I'm going to say, use that word, is based on the time that it's picked,
harvested.
okay, that the time that it's harvested. That's how we go. Vaha bein Rabban Gamliel, bein Rabbi Eliezer, and in this case, whether it's the view of Rabbi Eliezer, le'inyan shvi'i etrog b'tar chanata azlina, and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer, in regards to the issue of Shvi'it, they may follow the fact that an etrog goes after the time of its ripening, the time the fruit emerges. Okay? That's not, as taught elsewhere in the Mishnah, etrog shave le'ilan b'shlosha drachim v'liyerek b'derech echad. That an etrog is similar to a tree in 3 ways and similar to a vegetable in 1 way. And now the Gemara is going to clarify. Shave le'ilan b'shlosha drachim. It's equal, it's the same as a tree in 3 ways, namely, number 1, orla. In other words, the limitation that it can't be taken, used, consumed, whatever phrase we want to use, within the first 3 years. That's the orla. Second, revayim, namely in the 4th year, we say it has to be deconsecrated by redemption to be able to be used outside of Jerusalem. Okay, so that way, by the way, revai is similar to their sheni in that regard. Okay, Shvi'it, and in regards to Shvi'it, to the Shemitah year, Liyerek b'derech echad, and it's similar to a vegetable in one way, namely, if we go on just a little bit, Shebisha'at l'kitato isuro, that at the time of its harvesting, that's when its tithe is due. That's the view of Rabban Gamliel. Rabbi Eliezer,
Yeah.
that an etrog is similar to a tree in all aspects, okay, including, by the way, the maas. The Amar, because he says, he hai Tana, as said by this Tana, the Tanya, in other words, that who, Amar, that our Tana of the Mishnah says it's similar to the following Tana, who teaches as follows in a Braita, Amar Rabbi Humus, okay, He'id, Mishum Chamisha Zkenim. Rabbi Yossi says that another sage of Tumas is his name, once testified in conjunction with 5 other elders, Etrog Echar L'Kita L'Ma'aser. The etrog follows its harvesting. Rabbeinu Nimnu Ba'usha Ba'amru Bein L'Ma'aser Bein L'Shvi'it. And the rabbi said in Usha, when they based in Mecca, they said the etrog is similar then, okay, for the tree, both in terms of its tithing and in terms of to Shemitah year. Okay, and so that's the point where it's where we're going to stop. The Gemara is going to then try to give an answer, okay, and have a problem with that right. Right? So we'll pick up there tomorrow.
Climb over me. I can climb over you. But good.
Sid, come up, come this.
I'm not.
Heard a couple of people who were talking.
One of them was Steve, one was Sam, what's his name? Sam, the judge. Sam,
Who's the judge?
from Muncie.
Oh, Coleman.
Coleman, one was Sam Coleman, and one was Ruvain.
I didn't know Sam Coleman was part of this.
And one was Ruvain.
Ruvain, who?
That's the one in Hammer's apartment. Good morning, sweetheart.
Good morning.
Oh, it looks like, it's raining?
It's
Yeah.
not supposed to.
Well, I see water on the window, so it must be raining. Okay. It's worked out okay. He said it was 20 minutes late,
What was?
the power. Means they had to start. I mean, they better staying home and davening home.
Yes.